fourth person.
Good morning.
All right, we're gonna get started. Okay, my name is Steven Thorstensen, and I am the cafe supervisor here at Quirk Cafe, part of Quirk Hotel in Charlottesville, Virginia.
My name is Matthew Brzezinski. I do work with Blanchard's Coffee out of Richmond, Virginia. My roles mainly include doing tech work on equipment for our wholesale accounts, and I also do a lot of production at the roastery, shipping out your orders online and helping out wholesale accounts make sure they get their coffee. But every now and again, I get to pop out and do cool stuff like this with Steven. So yeah, really excited to be here.
Awesome, thank you. This is so welcome to our first of what is a monthly series, and it's where we get together and we taste a selection of coffees. Hopefully they're all going to be different every month, and we wanted something. So this is an idea that if any of you have heard of James Hoffman, he is a very popular coffee YouTuber. He's based in the UK, and in 2019 he launched this annual event called the World's Largest Coffee Tasting, and where he and his roastery sent out thousands of these tasting kits, and everyone got to tune into the live stream, and they all cut the coffees together at the same time, but from the comfort of their own homes. So I thought that format would be very appropriate given the conditions that we are currently experiencing. So we wanted to be safe, but we also wanted to have a lot of fun and wanted to give everybody a neat experience. So this is the first event of its kind for us, and I really want to thank each of you for your support and for giving us a shot. We're definitely working out the kinks. As you know, we postponed the event a week just because we wanted to make sure everyone's boxes got to each of you on time. So thank you for your patience, and thanks for tuning in today. Without further ado, we're going to get into it. So we are doing a cupping, and a cupping is a way of tasting coffee. The beauty of a cupping is that it's super simple, it's super easy. And a lot of people might ask, why do people do cuppings? Why does specialty coffee rely on cuppings? And the simple answer is it's because they're simple and easy. And when you are, for example, like let's say I'm a roastery and I've got this super popular blend coffee. So for Blanchard's, that might be Blanchard's blend. Coffee is an annual crop, and that same coffee, like let's say the blend has 3 single origin coffees that comprise the blend. They might not be available all year round. So throughout the year, they're going to replace 1 or 2 of those coffees with different coffees. So what's going to happen is that Blanchard's is going to reach out to their farms and their distributors and importers, and they're going to get all these coffees. I'm totally generalizing what you guys do, but this is just what my familiarity. This is what most roasteries are going to do. They're going to order all of these samples. It could be under 10. It could be dozens. And what they got to do is they got to taste all of these coffees, and they got to figure out the perfect replacement for the coffee and that blend. And so a cupping is this super simple way of tasting coffees side by side, compare and contrast, name of the game. And all it is we have these cupping bowls. These are 200 mils?
Yeah, 6 ounces.
6 ounces. And we have a coffee 12 grams. 12 grams. It's a pretty standard ratio. So typically you're going to do 60 grams of coffee to 1,000.
Yep, and 1:16 ratio.
1:16 mils of water, and we are basically just going to pour hot water over grounds. We are going to break the crust. We are going to smell the coffee, and then finally, after we let the coffee cool, we're going to taste the coffee. So all we need is bowls, a grinder, and some hot water, and we're well on our way to figuring out what coffee is going to replace that one coffee in the blend that we had before. And not only do roasteries do this, coffee shops are going to do this when they're trying to select what coffees they want to brew. Buyers are going to do this at origin when they're trying to figure out what coffees to purchase from a farm, to import into their own country, so on and so forth. We could do V60s of each of these, but it would be time consuming and after a while even be annoying. Not that we don't love V60s. I love V60s. And V60, again, that's just another brewing method. It's a pour over method. Yeah. So we have ground our coffees. We did that in advance. I'm going to give each of you a few minutes to go ahead and do that. And then, Matt, if you want to walk us through each of the coffees in front of us.
Yeah.
And Matt and I also have the same cards that you do.
So, but yeah, like Steven said, cupping is something that happens all throughout the coffee value chain, and it's a great thing to help figure out the feedback loop of what do we need to do for coffee to get the product that we're looking for. So yeah, I'm really excited to do this. This is something that would typically happen with upwards of 10 or 20 people in cupping the same bowls. But one thing that was fast to go away in the era of COVID is not sharing cupping bowls. So you can see Steve and I both have separate flights of coffee, and yeah, it's a great thing that doesn't really impart any sort of bias in the brewing process. So it's really nice to be able to cup with people again. This is something that I personally haven't been able to do very much at all over the past year or so. I'm very excited. So while you guys get your coffee ground, I'm going to go ahead and cover the coffees that we have. In order of what we're going to taste, we're going to start off with Richmond Blend. Richmond Blend is the newest blend from Blanchard's. We'll talk a little bit more about what goes into it and what to expect from the flavor as we taste it. But Richmond Blend is where we're going to start. It's going to be a really nice entry into cupping, and hopefully be something you guys all enjoy. After that, we have another blend, actually. This is kind of a unique blend. It's a single origin blend, meaning two coffees from the same farm, the same estate. And this estate is Finca Obraje. It's a really long-standing relationship Blanchard's has had over the years, and we're really excited and proud of this coffee that we have in the second spot. So I'm really excited to taste that coffee. The final two coffees are also from the same estate. It's going to be Finca El Zacatin out of Colombia. The first one we're going to taste out of the two is the Tabby varietal. Over the past few months, we've had the pleasure of bringing in 3 different coffees from El Zacatin, all naturals and all from the same farm. So the only variable that's changing between 3 coffees is the varietal. So if you had the chance, we had an SL28 that was really nice. We actually featured at our last Quirk in-person tasting event. Mm-hmm. So these are the other 2 coffees, also from the same farm. The Tabby being the first one, and the final coffee that we're tasting is a Gesha varietal. A really special, really sought after coffee that really happy that Zacatin put all this effort into producing, and we're really happy to be able to roast and share with our customers.
For those of you who don't know, a varietal is basically a branch of coffee under the species of Arabica. So many of you may have heard of the of Arabica, or CAFÉ Arabica. And so this type of coffee has all of these like branches that stem from it. So it's like you're at the store and you're looking at apples, and there's Granny Smith, there's Golden Delicious, there's Fuji. These are all different types of varietals or varieties. And so coffee is much the same. And so just like apples can taste, these different types can taste drastically different from one another. Coffee, same thing. So we're kind of, the fact that we have these 2 varietals from the same farm, probably the same cultivation method, similar processing, that really gives us the opportunity to kind of like really break apart how one varietal is different from the next when most of the other conditions and factors are similar. So that was the goal of that.
And one thing I did want to note is we're on YouTube Live, and one cool feature of YouTube Live is this comment section. It's on the right side of the screen. It's going to say live chat. feel free to fire off in that box if you have any questions at all for Stephen and I about setting up. How do I start tasting the coffee? What you're having an issue there, or if you have any questions about some of the things that we're covering with varietal or processing or estates or single origin, anything like that, you're more than welcome to fire off, and that's what we're here for, just to answer questions like that.
Or if you have any answers, because we're all looking for answers in these difficult and challenging times.
If you have anything to add, fire off.
For sure. Okay,
Yeah.
So we have our coffees ground, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna pour hot water on them.
All right.
Let's just see how much you have from there.
Yeah.
And if you
Do you have a timer?
I do. I'm starting right now. So go ahead and we've started a timer, and that's going to tell us when to break the crust, and then when to start tasting the coffee. So if you have a scale, it's generally helpful to use the scale to get to 200 milliliters or 200 grams of water, or 6 ounces, depending upon the mode that your scale is set to. But if you know that so we've ground 12 grams of coffee into these, but if you know the volume of your bowl, it's okay to ballpark it just a little bit.
This is one of the more meditative processes in coffee, is pouring hot water on the ground.
Generally, like when you're at a cupping, you have like dozens of bowls. So you got one person that's just like doing all the water for all the bowls. You don't need a fancy gooseneck kettle like us, unless if you do have a fancy gooseneck kettle, good on you.
Feel free to use it. Might be the end.
But we also have this, and that's what we're going to use to fill the rest of these.
And this is also going to be kind of the first moment where you might start to detect differences in each of the coffees. You'll start to see color differences. These coffees are all roasted slightly differently, and you'll also start to smell the coffees. Adding water starts to release a lot of those volatile aroma compounds that are imparted from the roasting process in coffee. And as you add water, you start to experience those. We'll dive into each coffee's specific aromas as soon as we have all the water open. Have 4 minutes of time to kind of experience and look into each coffee's aroma profile. So yeah, already I'm starting to see kind of these 3 coffees have a pretty distinct crust, and the second cup is a little more foamy, a little lighter in color.
Yep. Now, during a tasting, a lot of people are going to have a tasting form. It's going to have all these variables on it, like fragrance, aroma, body, acidity, balance, so on and so forth. We kind of did away with that for this tasting, just to keep things simple. We're here to have fun. We're here to learn a little bit. So we can go over a lot of these. So fragrance is, we kind of refer that to like the dry aroma of the ground coffee. And then once we add the water, then we refer to the scent as aroma. So fragrance dry, aroma wet, right?
It's a small detail, but it can be confusing when you're reading documentation and trying to figure out the difference between aroma and fragrance. Not be intuitive at times. So.
Yeah, sometimes you run into a rogue barista, a wild barista, and they're like talking to you, and you need to like figure out how to speak their language. So we're gonna help you with some of the lingo. So next time you have a run-in, you can throw out some words, and they'll be like,
you know about coffee.
oh my god, and that might actually that make it worse.
Potentially. Depends on where you want the rest of your day to go.
Okay.
What are we out of time?
We are at 4 minutes.
Cool. That's about time to start breaking our crust. At least mine. Yours are probably 45 seconds to a minute behind.
Yep.
So we're going to preheat our spoon full of hot water, and we're going to get ready to break the crust. So this is one of the moments with the biggest release of aroma. So it's helpful to bring your nose down to the bowl as you're breaking that crust and experience this really big release of aroma. So I'm going to go ahead and start breaking the crust on my coffees. And to break that crust, you're just going to go from top to bottom 3 times with your spoon. And that's going to introduce a little agitation to the coffee as well, and that'll help increase our extraction before we taste it.
And that coffee is going to eventually sink to the bottom, which will effectively stop the brewing process. We don't want those coffees to over-extract. After each coffee, I'm dipping into rinse water.
This is one of my favorite parts of the cupping process. You're getting little hints of what's to come in each coffee, but you're not getting the full experience. I think a lot of what brewing coffee is about is anticipation and looking forward to what you're about to experience, and I feel like this is one of the big lead-up moments to the actual drinking process. Do you have some of those ceramic bowls? After we're done breaking the crust, we're going to skim each bowl to get that kind of foamy lipid substance off the top of the coffee. In theory, this is a process that you could skip, but ideally we don't want coffee grounds in our teeth for the rest of the day, so this helps avoid that.
We're taking taking 2 spoons and we're kind of joining them together, a little bit of overlap, and then we'll start from one end of the bowl and then scrape towards us and then land in any receptacle.
It doesn't have to be perfect. We're really just looking to get the majority of that coffee foam off the top so we can get to the actual brewed coffee beneath.
Again, we're rinsing our spoons off after each skim. Skim milk, avoid it. Matthew's a little bit more seasoned at this.
I would try this at the same time though.
Kind of slow.
And this is not super time sensitive as you do it at home. There's no need to rush. We really won't be able to taste the coffees fully for another few minutes as they cool down. So I think it's more important to focus on not spilling the coffee and getting as much of that foam off as you can rather than trying to rush through it.
So we are at 7 minutes and 50 seconds.
Awesome. Yeah, I think as we get closer to around 10 minutes, that's when we'll begin actually tasting the coffees. So in that meantime, we can start filling out a little bit of our tasting card. Hopefully you've already got the coffee names filled out. Mentioned a couple of the origins. Technically, coffee 1 is a blend, and like on paper it just is Richmond blend, but to peel back a little bit of layer and let you guys in on what the coffees actually are. The components in Richmond blend are going to be from Honduras and El Salvador. If you're interested in that.
Honduras and El Salvador.
And if you missed it, the rest are Colombian coffees. And as we also wait for it to cool down, feel free to go back in for a second pass on aroma and get a little bit more of that.
You'll see people like you've maybe been to a company before, or a company you'll go to, and you'll see coffee professionals writing down notes at every step of the way, every part of the process. You don't have to do that unless you want to.
Yeah, feel free.
It's ultimately what this is for you it's the compare and contrast element. So this is going to help you figure out what you like, what you don't like, and you're going to be able to make better buying decisions in the future. You walk into a coffee shop and they've got something new on pour over, and you might be able to say, is that a higher elevation blah 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 process? I love those. Give me that. Matthew, do you mind going over some of the process methods for coffees?
Yeah. So we'll start with coffee 2 and then circle back to rich and blend because it is that blended adds a little bit of complication. But for our purposes, coffee 2, the Obraje Calibri is going to be a wash process, Colombian coffee. Coffee 3 is going to be a natural or dry process. And the same for coffee 4. It's also a naturally processed coffee. And if you're interested in filling out elevation, the final 2 coffees are grown at 2,200 meters above sea level. And coffee 2, the Obraje Calibri, is 1,800 meters above sea level. So it's cool to already start to see within the same country of origin, we're seeing differences of process as well as elevation. And we'll start to taste even more differences as we start to get our spoons in there.
So we're past 10 minutes now. We are going to take our first slurp, not sip, slurp. So this is a point of controversy for me because baristas, if you get too many of them in a room, it becomes a battle. Who has the best, loudest, most ridiculous slurp? So we're going to talk about why there is a slurp. Why do they do this? Why is this? Where is this behavior coming from? So we have these spoons. These are cupping spoons, but basically they're just soup spoons, is what they really are. So that gives us, a nice bowl. Okay, you get a good amount of coffee in there, and then it's got like this, more of a rim to it. So we're gonna pick that up and we're gonna slurp the coffee, and what that does is it aerates it, and that gives it full coverage in your entire mouth, your entire palate, if you will. So this is going to help you amplify the taste of the coffee, so you can really, dial it in. I don't know if any of that made any sense. I think I was just saying hype words at the end there. But yeah, we want to aerate the coffee so we can get full coverage inside our mouth, so we can taste it as effectively as possible.
Don't be ashamed of a loud slurp. It's welcomed in this situation.
Yeah, I should have put a sign up that said "Morning Slurp." Okay, so we're gonna start with our first coffee. We're gonna go, okay, and then we're gonna dunk, rinse, second coffee, third coffee. As we do this, the coffees are gonna begin to cool, and the cooler the coffee gets, the more capable your tongue, your mouth becomes at tasting the coffee. So they're just going to open up, and you're going to get more out of them. And it's going to be really interesting to see these changes that take place over time. And so we're going to continue to taste them. I might go from like 2 to 3 to 1 to 4 to 2 to 3 to 2 to 2 again. Mm-hmm. Let's do it.
Awesome.
All right.
First slurp, dude.
Oh God, getting performance anxiety. Is that good?
That's great.
Put me to shame. Oh, did you see how it went high right there? I can't do that. Oh, that's tasty. as you're tasting these, feel free to. Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. See. The purpose of my existence at a cupping when I go with Matt is just to make Matt look good, all right, or sound good. Okay, that's the only reason I'm there. Like, sure, the coffee tastes good.
Steven's also there to make sure that we talk to the right people.
You're the social one. Kind of, I just like look at people and like, then they're like. As you go through these, feel free to write down your notes, what you're getting out of these coffees. Give me hearing damage, man. Oh, that's getting juicy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm against calling out what notes I'm getting in the beginning. I think I'm going to start writing down what I taste, but I'm not going to say it out loud. And the reason being is because I don't want to like put that in someone's head who's standing next to me. If I'm at a live cupping, I don't want to do that because like if I say, "Oh, this tastes like milk toast," then someone's going to start tasting milk toast, you know. So don't want to do that. I should not have said that. Okay. So I'm gonna pause here for a second and talk to y'all about what process is. What is the difference between natural or dry process and washed and wet process? And what's honey process? And why is there like red honey process, yellow honey process, so on and so forth? So processing is, you know, we're got all these, a coffee tree, all right, at origin it's a plant, it's a tree, and it has cherries on it. And inside of those cherries are the little coffee seeds. There's 2 in each cherry, but we refer to them as beans. So if you've ever, like, just go on Reddit, there's like this big argument, should we call them coffee beans or should we call them what they really are, coffee seeds? And nobody cares. But anyway, I digress. Processing is how we remove the cherries and the pulp and all the other layers to get to the bean because we just want to end up with the bean. And there's different ways of doing that. And believe it or not, the way that we process the coffee impacts the end flavor of the coffee. So natural process, what's natural process? That's the easiest and simplest method. That's when the cherries are picked off of the tree and then they're left out to dry in the sun on raised beds. And so the cherries, they shrivel up, they ferment in the sun, and all those juices end up infusing into the bean. So natural processed coffee isn't really just the flavor of the bean, it's also the flavor of the cherry. And a lot of natural processed coffees are known for being acidic, for being fruity. We have these tropical notes, these berry notes, these floral notes. They can be wild, they can be bouncy, they can be different from cup to cup. That's natural process. Natural process is, you're going to see it a lot in countries that have low rainfall or low access to water, or they're not able to afford all of the machinery that you need to do a washed processed coffee. Washed processed coffee, Matthew, you're going to have to help me out on this because I always forget. So washed processed coffee is when we're going to pick the cherries off of the tree, and then we are going to let them soak in fermentation tanks. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then they're going to soak in fermentation tanks until the...
So there's this material that is attached to the coffee seed that we call mucilage. I think of it like the sticky stuff that's around the pit of a peach or a cherry after you get to that. on some stone fruit. So to get that off, this fermentation tank is employed to ferment that sticky, sugary pulp off of the outside of the cherry. And this can take anywhere from 12 to 48 hours, and sometimes even in excess of that if the producer is really trying to do something specific with the processing.
They might do a double fermentation.
Yeah, there's
they're feeling crazy.
There's been a lot of really interesting experimentation with processing recently, even employing different yeasts in that fermentation tank to produce certain flavors, and different fermentation times and temperatures. All these things will come into impact the final cup, which is really interesting, and it's been fun to watch all this process experimentation happen over the past few years. And some of these coffees are even examples of that experimentation.
Mm-hmm. So the cherries are going to ferment, okay, and the mucilage is going to come off.
That's right.
Okay, and then what do we do?
So from there you have a coffee bean with this stuff. It's this parchment paper called pergamino. This is actually, at this point, you could put that seed in the ground and you grow a coffee plant. But for a lot of reasons, you don't want to ship that product out. So it has to go to what we call a dry mill after that, and that's where that pergamino is removed, and the coffee is placed in large oftentimes 69 kilogram bags, and shipped to folks like Blanchards and other roasters all around the world to be cooked and shipped out to coffee shops. So yeah, that dry mill is the final step that happens at origin before export. It often gets overlooked because it doesn't really play a role in flavor, but it is really important.
Ashley asks, can we explain Swiss water process?
Yeah.
So that's actually, that happens after coffee is processed. It's an additional step in which we want to take the caffeine out of the bean, and then we'll ship that product to roasters, and they can roast it, and then it's a decaf coffee. So as far as I know, and I always read like different like descriptions of this. Matt, help me out.
Sure.
So what we do with Swiss water process is we are going to take like a batch of beans, of green.
Unroasted coffee.
Unroasted coffee is referred to as green coffee because it is green. It's this beautiful jade color. And we are going to submerge that batch in a tank of water. Specific type of water.
Yeah, I've heard this water solution referred to as green coffee concentrate.
Right.
And it has a lot of the same molecules that you find in the actual green coffee product, with the exception of caffeine. So because of osmosis, the coffee wants to find equilibrium with the water, so that caffeine is naturally going to leak out of the green coffee bean into the solution that it's floating in, resulting in a decaffeinated coffee seed or tea.
And I'm told that sometimes they'll use that water up into like a certain number of batches. I thought that I read somewhere that the way that they make that water is by like soaking a batch of green in that water, and then all the flavor and all the compounds come out of the green, and then they charge that water, and then they dump the beans. They take the first batch of beans, and they're like, we don't need you because now it's the opposite problem. It's like beans with caffeine but no flavor.
Yeah.
And then the second batch is what really is the Swiss water process. Swiss water, so it's really just water process, and Swiss water or mountain water refers to the type of water that is actually used in the process. So we might even begin to see like different types of like blank water process depending on where that water has been sourced from. There you go.
Yeah. Blanchard does carry one Swiss water processed decaf coffee from Brazil. It's been a really cool decaf coffee that we've been really happy with for the past few years. Yeah, we love Swiss water process decaffeination.
That's what we serve on espresso, our decaf, if you're interested.
Sure.
We do pour overs that decaf as well. That one's really solid. So these coffees have had good time to cool now, and a lot of those flavors are starting to open up. You know, you may not find like room temperature coffee appealing. I can understand why a lot of people wouldn't. I think of it as an opportunity.
It's really amazing how much the coffees have changed from that 10-minute mark where they're super hot, almost too hot to taste. Really could just kind of get really big picture, broad stroke flavors. And now the coffee is almost entirely available to taste, and it's dramatically more sweet. The body has developed. All of those flavors are more present. The acidity's popping. This is really my favorite time to be tasting the coffee, just because of that available flavor.
Oh man, yeah, it's so good, but I can't put my finger on it when I'm tasting.
One tool that you'll see a lot of, especially coffee professionals employ while they're tasting, is a coffee flavor wheel. At Blanchard's, we have a massive 6x6 poster of this in our tasting lab. But basically, it has a lot of the common flavors you'll find in coffee, starting with kind of broad flavors in the middle, and as it extrapolates out, getting more specific. So you might see fruity as one of the inner areas, and then the tertiary ring might be stone fruit, and then after that you might get into peach, plum, cherry, things like that. So it helps a lot of people get an idea of what they are tasting. It's like, hey, this is tasting spicy, but I don't really know what. And then via this tool, you might be able to figure out that what you're tasting is actually cloves or cinnamon, and it can help you kind of get to that specific flavor.
Hector asks, is there a preference in water? Well, maybe. I think some people, it's more of like an aesthetic than anything else. I know different waters from different areas of the world are going to have different mineral contents, different pH levels, and this is going to factor in somewhat. Water is actually a great conversation to start. So the reason why we sent you all those packets of third wave water, and then we recommended you go to the store and you buy purified water, that's water with nothing in it, was so that we all had the same water. The taste, the quality of your water greatly impacts the taste and quality of the resulting coffee that you brew with it. If you have bad water, if you live in the middle of a big city and you have this gross hard water and you have the best coffee in the world and you try to brew the best coffee in the world with that water, your resulting product is going to taste bad.
It's going to fall flat.
Yes. And I would say, a lot of people are going to tell you, what's the most important thing to have when you're brewing coffee? And some people might say it's it's your pour over cone, or it's your grinder, or it's to have a gooseneck kettle. Water, hands down, the quality of your water is the most important thing for the quality of your coffee.
I keep saying that too.
If you start with anything, start with good water. Just having a decent quality water filter can really help. But I know if you're a water enthusiast, there's a lot to be said about the different types of water filters. So I definitely recommend going online and doing some research. I'll be totally straight up with you. I've got pretty good water where I live, but I also use a Brita filter, and it's not the best, but I enjoy the coffee that I have each day as long as I'm replacing that filter. I think it's every 2 months is what they state. So just make sure that you're doing that as well.
And one thing that you'll find that I found that's really interesting about water quality as it relates to coffee brewing is Steven kind of touched on it, but geography. Where is the roaster that you're buying from located, and where are you located? So, for example, Blanchard's, we're based in Richmond. We're using Richmond water. We do treat it at our roastery and cafes to help soften it a little bit. But your coffee is going to taste better if you're using water that is more similar to the water that's being roasted for. So if you're buying a really nice coffee from Norway, your water is going to be a lot different than the water in Norway. But if you're buying a coffee from Richmond, and you live in Richmond, you are going to have a lot. You're going to have a lot of luck with just using that tap water at your house. It's going to taste really good, even with it being just tap water. So water quality is something that really plays a big role in coffee brewing. And yeah, coffee is 98 to 99% water. It's the biggest ingredient in the actual product. So if your water has any off flavors, you will taste that in coffee. So yeah, filtration is great. And if you have the means of using a product like third wave water and distilled water, that's even better.
Ashleen asks, is there a tipping point after the opening up that coffee no longer tastes authentic?
That's a great question.
I'm going to say no. It depends really on how well you filtered the coffee after you've brewed it. If there are still residual coffee solids, coffee particles, they're going to continue to extract. Now, heat is kind of out of the window there, but they're still going to continue to extract somewhat in your coffee, and that may become bitter, astringent. It may be just gross. Now, temperature is a big part of why we enjoy coffee. We like coffee hot or we like coffee cold, but it's hard to enjoy coffee when it's like kind of in the middle. I'd say if you take that coffee that's been sitting out and you pour it over some ice, it may certainly be salvageable. I'll drink anything, honestly. So I would say totally. It's coffee, but that's not true. I would leave it up to personal preference and let your taste buds be the guide. But as far as evidence suggests, you can still save that coffee.
Yeah, and I think in my personal experience, a lot of it depends on the actual quality of the coffee that you're starting off with. I find that really high quality coffees are going to be delicious all the way to room temperature and beyond. But sometimes if you have, let's say, a natural processed coffee that maybe was fermented a little too much and is a little too funky, as it cools, it might start to lose some quality and it might start to decline.
It's going to start to basically reveal its negative factors as well as the positive ones.
Yeah, so I mean, sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing, and sometimes it's neutral. But I know for me, if we're having a cupping and there's a coffee that's really amazing, even as we're cleaning up, I'll just grab that cup and sip on it, even as it's room temperature or even cold. So great coffee holds up from temperature to temperature, and some coffees don't. So, like Steven said, quality product.
Okay, so these coffees they're cool. We've tasted them. I've written down my notes, and Matt has written down his notes. Mine are very simple notes. So if you listen to anyone, listen to Matt.
But also Steven. Steven knows what he's talking about.
I'm going to get in there one more time.
Yeah. While Steven gets his final sips in, I want to say a little bit about what Richmond Blend is and why we made it and what it is. So Richmond Blend, like I said earlier, is the most recent addition to the Blanchard's coffee blend lineup. And it was released alongside the opening of our Forest Hill location. And kind of like that location, this coffee is supposed to kind of point back to what Richmond means to Blanchard's and us, mostly about the relationships and quality of those relationships that a lot of people find in Richmond and that a lot of us at Blanchard's have found. Richmond's my home, and it's the home of Blanchard's, and I feel like this coffee kind of represents that on a couple of levels. From the relationship level, this coffee is comprised of two very long-term relationship farmers that Blanchard has been working with over the past 5 or so years. Those two relationships being Cassia Duke out of Honduras. She is the owner and operator of Finca San Isidro out of Honduras, and she produces some of the highest quality coffees in Honduras, and we've had the pleasure of working with her over the past few years with bringing in some of her coffees. This blend is comprised of one of the coffees from her farm. The other portion of the coffee is coffee from El Salvador that we've also been working with over the past few years. We may have had it as a single origin in the past, and it's actually a naturally processed El Salvador coffee. So in your tasting, you may have tasted a little bit of fruity, kind of sweet, juicy characteristics, and I would attribute those flavors to that naturally processed coffee. So it's kind of fun in this coffee to see the two different flavors of the coffees play out through the cup. Steven, did you taste anything in Richard Blend that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I did. Oh God, more questions.
Oh, wow.
So we're gonna go over our notes. What we liked about the coffees, what we didn't like, and then I think at the end we'll choose our favorite or worth it winner. And then I would love to talk about like pairings with food or with pastries or with
just
or with
ways
other
to
coffees.
enhance the flavor experience. I think that's definitely something we can circle back to.
Yes, so we are going to answer those questions very soon. Okay, so Richmond Blend, good body, great mouthfeel. I think as far as like the scent of the coffee was concerned, I got like whiskey, and like wood smoke. I thought was part of it. The coffee itself, to me, it was smoky. It was nutty. It was like grainy, like cereal. It was like really sweet. And so this one was very pleasant. I imagine I've already done this. I think it goes really well with oat milk. I love oat milk.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. One of my notes, kind of speaking to that cereal note you were talking about, was oat. It kind of, for me, felt like the texture of oat milk, if you've had it, where it's really thick, really satisfying, but also has like very, very fine particulate that kind of brings this kind of creamy body. That was one thing that was a big hallmark of this cup for me today, was the body, how satisfying and thick, sweet it was. And like Steven said, this is a coffee that would really hold up really well to, in addition, like whole oat milk.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the nose, I got a lot of really nice, kind of spicy flavors. I guess, kind of speaking to what Steven had with whiskey, I wrote cinnamon and chocolate.
It was kind of like almost like fumes.
Yeah.
Pleasantly. But just the way it really kind of like perks your nose up.
It's kind of like sweet woodiness, almost like cedar.
Yes, cedar.
But I look at this coffee as a really, really comforting cup of coffee that anybody could drink black, I think, without too much issue. It has enough sweetness and body to make most people happy. One curveball note that I did have that you might disagree with me on, Steven, is banana. It kind of had this really, really, really ripe, fruity flavor that I was having trouble putting my finger on until I kind of started to think of the cup almost like banana bread, where it's like this spicy, bready flavor, and then finishing with this kind of round, like almost overripe banana that I thought was really, really pleasant. But you may or may not have gotten that, but that was just one thing that kind of stuck out to me as a coffee pool.
So this leads me to my next point. So I didn't get that. Does that mean Matt didn't taste that? Not at all. So here's the thing about people. They all have different palates. Like, we're all genetically different. We're all going to taste different things in a coffee. So nobody's wrong. Nobody's right. We're all just like tasting things, but we all have like similarities. So we're going to say something that another person might be like, oh, for sure. And ultimately, like, those notes might be like what go on a bag. If I'm a roaster publishing a coffee, there were elements of the coffee that I think I get where you're coming from, for sure.
And sometimes notes might not even be. They're more of like an idea of like where the flavor's going, but
Right.
not necessarily that specific flavor. I know that it's confusing. Sometimes not even helpful, but
It's things are so like ephemeral sometimes that us making a note is basically like our closest anchor of understanding. That's why some people don't want to put notes on bags, like some roasters don't, because it's kind of like they're putting an idea of what the coffee is in someone's head, and it's not really that. So it's like it basically creates this false perception, and then when they go to taste the coffee, they're kind of missing out because they've closed their mind to anything else but those flavors. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. With that being said, I think we can move on to.
Let's move on to the Colibri blend.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one for me, it was lighter, it was cleaner. It was almost less like coffee and more like tea. So I definitely felt like it was there were, as far as tea goes, the tea's a big world. I thought it was closer to like green or white tea. I got jasmine tea, which may be assumptive, but there were a lot of florals in there for me. And the coffee was just like so pleasant, so light, so dainty. It was great.
I really see this coffee as being a big departure from a trim blend in a lot of ways. Definitely a lot more delicate.
So different.
Yeah, a lot more acidity too. One of the first things I noticed in this coffee was the acidity. The acidity for me reminded me almost like a can of Sprite. If you've ever had one of those in the past 5 years, there was this really big lemon lime moment that was super intense and pronounced. But after that, I got a really nice ripe red cherry flavor that was super pleasant to me. And flavors after that were really sweet watermelon, but as you kind of start to get closer to the rind, that like green flavor, it was kind of a cooling, fresh moment that I really enjoyed and fun refreshing. And in that same vein, I also wrote cucumber.
Cucumba.
Yeah, kind of this green, fresh, refreshing, sweet, watery flavor that I really enjoyed. I also totally agree with the green tea note that Steven had. I think that is spot on. And one thing that this coffee, it's worth talking about this coffee, is that it's also a blend. I mentioned that earlier, but we can talk a little bit more in detail. This is a blend of 2 different varieties from Obraje. The first being Americatura. That's a pretty standard issue coffee that Obraje has been producing for many years now. The second coffee, and actually the majority of what this coffee is comprised of, is Gesha. So Gesha, I think, is upwards of 60 or 70% of this coffee's blend. And Gesha is known for being very floral, very tea-like, very delicate, and very fruit-forward, very berry characteristics, a lot of citrus. So it's kind of fun to see a lot of those characteristics show up in the cup, but also I feel like it's rooted and kind of grounded by this Americatura, to where it's not overly delicate or overly acidic. I feel like it really makes it a well-rounded cup of coffee.
It's almost more accessible in that way for people, for most palates. Gesha, it's an area in Ethiopia where this varietal is from, and it's this prized varietal in specialty coffee because it's known for having those characteristics, for just being really classy. So if you're at a coffee shop or you're at a roastery or on someone's website and you see that they're selling a Gesha, more typically it's going to be more expensive than other coffees that they're offering. The crazy thing about the situation with this coffee is Blanchard's, and they're offering it in a blend, is the price point is very accommodating, very accessible. So if you like this coffee and you want to grab a bag of it, now is the chance. It's on their website and it's a beautiful coffee. Totally recommend it.
One of the reasons it is we're able to offer it at that price point is it's a unique story to 2020 and the coffee supply chain and how it had to deal with changes in buying over the coronavirus. So this normally the geisha would be isolated and it'd be its own product. It would never be blended.
Right.
In any other year, it'd be crazy to think that you would blend the geisha. We've been buying the geisha from Pablo at Obraje for a lot of years now. We've competed with it on dozens of stages. It's been one of our favorite coffees every year, and we're used to paying a lot more for it than we would in normal coffee. But with 2020, there was a lot of uncertainty in the coffee market. We weren't sure if people were going to be able to buy really, really expensive coffees. And neither was the producer at Obraje. So in that moment, they blended the Obraje with a coffee that they'd already been producing, just to move it, to create this kind of mid-tier product that bridged the ultra high-end and what their normal offerings are.
So in a sense, you could say they watered it down. So it's still a fantastic product, but probably like first that I'd ever heard of geisha being blended with another coffee. It's so unusual.
Yeah.
But now we have this coffee here, which is kind of like, that circumstance is kind of birthed for us, and now we get to experience this, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's really neat.
Moving on to the third coffee. So this is a different farm, El Zacatin. And this is the Tabby varietal of Arabica. This is a naturally processed coffee, pretty high elevation for Colombian coffee.
Very high elevation.
So with higher elevation coffees, I've heard this disputed, but when a coffee plant is at a higher elevation, you've got two things that are happening. The first is there's a change in temperature from day to night. So you have these high temperatures during the day, really low temperatures at night. And this variation in temperature is what creates these really climactic flavors in coffee. The second thing that's happening is there's less oxygen content the higher up you go. So the plant has to rely less on oxygen for producing energy and more on anaerobic energy production. And this is going to create acidic compounds within the plant that are going to make their way into the cherry. And there's two reasons why high elevation coffees are going to be more acidic on average than lower elevation coffees. Now acidity, it's one of those things that's, in the world of coffee versus out of the world of coffee. Acidity, if you're outside of the world of coffee, this sounds like a bad thing. Acidity sounds like sourness. It sounds like just unpleasant. But acidity in coffee is one of the things that makes coffee so great. Think of like biting into a fresh Granny Smith apple. Think of like a fresh squeezed juice. This is acidity. And acidity is kind of what gives balance to like fat and oil in a meal, in a dish. We love acidity. Now, acidity can be good when described the way I just did, or it can be bad. It can be like too acidic. It can be like overly sour and unpleasant and just like makes you like pinch your mouth.
Think of biting into like a fresh lemon or.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to do that. That's a no-no. So the Tabby that we're tasting, this third coffee, you may have noticed, but the acidity just got dialed up. This coffee is more acidic than the two coffees before it. And not coincidentally, you may have wrote down a lot of like fruity or citrusy notes. So for aroma, I wrote that it was very sweet. It had a citrusy aroma. When I tasted the coffee, it was like a fruit smoothie. And I got some melon in there as well. I thought I've been drinking this coffee for like the past like week and a half, 2 weeks, and it's just like, oh my God, it's a treat. It's so wild, so bountiful. Those aren't really good descriptors, but
I captured the idea of the coffee.
Yeah.
Pretty well.
What'd you get, Matt?
This coffee I think was twofold for me. The first thing that really leapt out to me was just like a blackberry pie or even a multi-berry pie where you just Even taking a bunch of frozen berries, throwing them in a pot, and just cooking them down, and making a cobbler or a pie. It just tastes like fruit everywhere. So much sweetness, so much acidity.
Right.
But after that, kind of the flavor that followed that berry note was this really kind of sweet, piney note that I really enjoyed. It was kind of resinous. It was sweet, but not quite as sweet as the other flavors. And I feel like this kind of brought balance to the whole experience. It kept it from being one-noted, brought a little bit of complexity, and rounded out the experience for me a lot. This coffee's body is super, super jammy, super like sticky, sweet, thick. And if you like fruity coffees, I think this is really, really one that captures what that means. What it means to be a fruity coffee. I think it delivers on body and acidity and complexity of flavor.
Mm-hmm. So moving on to the fourth coffee, the Gesha. So this is purely a Gesha from Zacatine. And again, this is one of those coffees at a super accessible price point on Blanchard's website. This coffee is amazing in my mind. So I'll talk about what I smelled and then what I tasted. So I got they were like fruit notes, but they were more tropical. Yeah. So I got I got guava. I got some tangerine in there. It was very multifaceted. So I was really excited to try this coffee. And then when I did, it was, oh my God, it was like zing. So I thought the acidity on this one was even higher than that of the Tabby. I almost thought it tasted like Flintstones gummy vitamins.
Yeah.
So it just in a good way. I love those things. And a lot of orange for me in the cup. And then that kind of like gave way to Earl Grey. And I know, like, if you know, Earl Grey has bergamot in it. And I got just these like these lingering black tea notes, and kind of opened up to some florals there, and it was just extremely pleasant. So it starts out like kind of like punching you with that acidity and that brightness, all those fruity flavors, and then it just kind of like gives way and just lays out this red carpet of like tea-like notes, and florals, and that's Gesha to a T. Matt.
I thought you described it perfectly. This coffee it's a lot, but it's displayed in a very elegant, straightforward way. One thing that really left out to me about this coffee was its clarity of flavor. It didn't really feel super muddled. One thing that I kind of did say about the Tabby was it had a lot of flavors, but sometimes it felt like they were on top of each other.
Right.
And it's kind of hard to taste specific things. But this coffee I felt like had really distinct layers of flavor it was really composed. For me, on the aroma, tons of florals. I was getting rose, jasmine, oolong tea, bergamot, like Steven said, all these different really high quality floral notes. In the cup, I got tons of tropical fruit, like Steven said. I was getting a lot of pineapple. I think pineapple would be even how I describe the acidity. It had this really nice, bright citric bite to it that I felt like was balanced and well represented by the flavors. Outside of pineapple, we got a lot of star fruit. If you've ever had one of those, it kind of had this really nice subdued acidity that I liked. And then from there, the guava I thought was a really nice note as well. I think this is a coffee that has really nice complexity, but displays it in a really elegant, mature way. And I think that's, like we said, one of the hallmarks of Gesha. So I think it's kind of fun to go between this cup and the second cup with the Calibri and kind of see washed Gesha versus natural Gesha, and secondly, a Gesha blend versus entirely 100% Gesha. I think this is a really nice kind of climax or crescendo to the tasting, and it's kind of the peak of the coffees we've been offering from Zacatine. From the SL28 to the Tabby to finally the Gesha. I feel like this is a really nice way to end it, and just a really cool example of like what coffee can taste like. If you've ever had a coffee like this, it can really challenge where you understand coffee and understand coffee in a different way. I think that's what coffees like this are great for. To the earlier question, which one's my favorite? this is definitely a strong contender for that.
You're not gonna say which one your favorite is?
I will say the coffee I'm drinking, I have access to all these coffees, and the coffee that I'm drinking at home right now is the Calibri from O'Brien. I love the Geisha, but it's not necessarily something I want to drink every single day.
Right.
It's a lot, and it's an excellent treat when I go to a coffee shop or I want something special. But day to day, the O'Brien Calibri kind of represents what I look for in coffee. It's so balanced and sweet, but also has some of the beginnings of those really high-end flavors that we saw in the Zacatine Geisha. So yeah, if I had to pick a favorite, I'd go O'Brien Calibri, followed by the Zacatine Geisha.
Okay.
What about you, Stu?
This is interesting you say that because this one is also my favorite, the Calibri blend. That said, coffees can taste differently depending upon how you brew them. So if I was brewing all these on a V60, I'd probably go with the Tabby varietal of Zacatine. However, I have had and this is just a hot take here, I've had the Calibri iced. I've been making iced pour-overs of this, and it is so good. It's like drinking Gatorade.
That's incredible.
I can't describe it any better than that. It's just like, I don't know, and it's almost like, you're drinking coffee every day. Maybe the point of what you're doing isn't to like sit down and like enjoy it, like really get like granular about it. Maybe it's just like just drink the coffee, And so I think that's why a lot of I've been drinking a lot of Richmond blend lately, and that's because like I wake up in the morning and I just throw it on, and then I put it in my mug, and then I'm out the door, and I'm like drinking it on my way there, and I don't really have to think about it. It's like so good. It's a daily drinker. But the problem with the ice version of this is like it is gulpable. So I end up just like crushing it in like 10 seconds, and then I'm like, well, I can't drink more because that's too much caffeine. I don't have any more coffee left. What do I do now? It's very good, very good. So yeah, today, as far as cupping goes, this is my favorite. It was just so artful. I don't know. So let's move on to the pairing question. What would we pair each of these with? So Richmond blend, based on its notes, I want to say it would be great with ice cream.
Sure.
Or like a very dairy forward dessert or pastry.
Yeah. A
cream-filled donut would be quite nice. If you're wondering like actual food, I don't know.
I'm in like baked good pastry land with Richmond blend.
Okay. Me too.
Would be able to drink 3 cups of it with a croissant.
If it was an almond croissant?
Yeah, talk to me. Yeah, I could see if you're open to Sub Rosa in Richmond. The almond croissants.
Oh my god, yeah.
Incredible with something like Richmond blend. Or maybe even a slice of banana bread, like I mentioned earlier. That'd be really good as well.
I'm going to quickly answer Ashleen's question. Milk or milk sub pairings, or just oat milk for everything? Half and half would go great with Richmond blend. Probably a nut-based milk would go really well with it. Oat milk would be great. We already talked about how there was like an aspect of like an oat grain in this and in the flavor that we got. And you don't have to, like, when you're tasting coffee side by side and you want to taste a coffee with milk, you may just like pour yourself a glass of coffee and a glass of milk and have it like a deconstructed, like taste the coffee, then the milk. I love doing that because then I can kind of like dial how much I want each sip, each tasting. I think it's like kind of classy too.
Yeah. Or with something Richmond blend, I really don't think you can go wrong with what you're putting in it. It'll adapt pretty well.
Hemp milk, rice milk, macadamia milk, banana milk.
Go crazy.
Cashew milk.
Banana milk, real.
Yeah. It's real.
So I'm just now saying, Ashleen asked a question, is this the same or different from a geisha? Geisha spelled with an I there.
It is the same.
Yeah, and it's a great question. It's a question that I was looking for the answer for a really long time, and turns out they're the same thing.
Yeah, so it's kind of, I want to say this was an Americanized
Mhm.
version of it. Geisha is a Japanese word. And it's almost more romantic to say geisha than gesha. And even some people in specialty coffee don't like using the word geisha because it's like, it's almost like it's
It can be looked at as cultural appropriation.
exactly. It's, we're kind of intentionally like confusing the customer, the buyer, because we want to make the coffee sound like even more special than it is.
Using this cultural word to sell a product.
Exactly. It's Gesha, Gesha. I think is like the most direct like translation of the original word. So yeah, they're the same thing. Hoping that we just see Gesha more because Geisha is no completely different thing.
Yeah.
So the second coffee, what would I pair that with?
Could see this with like some light fruit.
Yeah.
Maybe like an orange or
Something clean, something light, something like a appetizer.
Yeah.
If a fruit-based appetizer would be good.
Mm-hmm.
You might even have it with like an egg-based dish.
Sure.
I want to say it would be really good with. Maybe not. I wouldn't say anything meaty, but it could be good with like some white fish.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think the tabby is where the pairings get kind of interesting for me.
Yeah.
It can be anywhere from like a chocolate dessert. Like I'm thinking
chocolate would go really well.
Like a chocolate brownie would be really decadent with this.
Mousse.
Mousse would be crazy. But also if you're just wanted to lean into the berry characteristics, something maybe even just berries, I think that'd be excellent as well.
Yeah.
As far as additive pairings for these coffees, they're all on the more delicate side. So if you are going to add something to it, I would recommend small amounts to not overpower the coffees. Out of all of them, I would say the most robust is the tabby, and that would be able to hold up to some dairy or some oat milk. And I think, honestly, it'd probably be really delicious. It would taste like.
I've put oat milk in zacatine. I haven't. So sometimes coffees can be so acidic that if you add milk or cream to them, they will curdle. Not even kidding. I've seen it happen. So be careful that you're, I totally like berries and cream. Awesome.
All day.
Love it. Just make sure you're mixing it up thoroughly so that doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. And then especially like when we're serving, like sometimes people serve pour overs and I know they're so acidic that they're going to curdle. And people ask for cream, then I'm like freaking out because I know like I gotta like do this with the cup and then serve it to them immediately. Like here's your coffee and then run away. So they don't know any better. Yeah, that can happen. Gesha, pairings for Gesha.
I wouldn't recommend putting anything in this coffee. As far as dairy or
what would I eat it with?
I could see something like a light pastry, kind of like a macaron.
Oh, macaron. Yeah.
Something with like a kind of a more, maybe like a jasmine macaron if you wanted to lean into the existing flavors. But
yeah.
I'm trying to think of like a complementary flavor to it that maybe isn't present in the cup but would taste really good with it. I could even see something like something with some more fresh characteristics. If you're eating like avocado toast, I think that could be really yummy.
Yeah, I can see that.
Something kind of light and green.
I don't know. I want to say the Gesha and the Tabby, just both with their very like fruity characteristics. Avocado toast would be great. So yeah, that's what we recommend. I don't know if any one of these would go well with like red meat or something like really heavy and oily. I mean, I was talking about how like acidity helps cut through fat. I don't know. I mean, it could be good.
Yeah.
It could be bad. It's hard for me to say.
I could see Richmond blend holding up to something like a steak.
You think so?
It's been a long time since I've ever had a steak, but I could, in my mind's eye, I'm picturing a really delicious steak and Richmond blend dinner.
Fair.
But we'll leave that up to you all to make the final call on.
The world is your oyster.
Yeah.
Okay.
Has any final questions? Feel free to fire them off. But those who don't want to take up too much of your day, we really appreciate you showing up and tasting coffee with us. I know it's been a blast.
This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, we're the ones like talking and like actioning, gesturing. So thank you for being with us during this time. Yeah. We're gonna have these every month. Did I put it in the description? I think I did put next month's in the description. If you're interested in signing up, we've got the logistics worked out. Thank you, Brian. Really appreciate that. I'm glad you got some information out of it. Yeah. Definitely was one of the goals here.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're gonna be here every month and
different coffees.
Similar format.
We'll be Steven and I next time, presumably.
I mean, unless like I get replaced by a robot, it could happen.
That's right. Anything goes.
Anything.
It might even be a different part of the hotel.
Yeah. Let's do it in the lobby bar next time.
Yeah, that'd be very
for sure.
Right now we're in the very beautiful Babu, is what it's called.
Babu, yeah. So we are in the hotel's whiskey tasting bar and cigar smoking lounge, which is not open yet. So right now this is just extra cafe seating. This is a place people can come. It's upstairs. We have fireplaces. It's kind of like more of like a chill, low-key space.
Very cozy.
Yeah. So if you're like just kind of trying to read a book or just chill out for a second, this is the spot. Yeah, very open. Anyone is welcome to come. Babu will be open in the future. Right now, it was designed to be a more intimate space, and that is just not in right now. So, we'll get there. But for now, it's our cool little hangout spot for everybody.
Yeah. If you're looking for ways to engage with Steven and I in between now and next month's tasting, you can find Steven here at Quirk, Charlottesville, making coffee, having conversations like this every day about coffee and helping people understand coffee. If you're in Richmond or Richmond-based, feel free to swing by one of the Blanchard's cafes. We have one on Broad Street and Forest Hill, and they're both open every day of the week, serving a lot of these coffees that we tasted today. Mm-hmm. And I noticed a lot of you were not even in Virginia. Which is really cool. Thank you for reaching out to us.
Honored.
In that case, the website is available for you, and all these coffees are on offer. As well as a lot of other ones.
Subscription boxes as well. If you're interested in getting them every month, delivered to your door.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you want to contact us about anything, you can reach out to the Blanchard's Instagram or the Quirk Hotel Charlottesville Instagram.
If you want to reach out to Steven and I personally, my personal email is matt@blanchardscoffee.com. Feel free to hit me up there.
And I think you can contact me through the Eventbrite. I'm the one in control of that. So definitely any questions, please reach out. Or you can send them to the YouTube channel for sure. You can message us on there. And I'll try to respond to you within 24 hours. So thank you so much for coming out. This concludes the very first Quirk times Blanchard's Coffee live tasting. And we'll see you next month.
Thank you so much.
Everybody have a great day. Yeah. We'll see you later.